Now we're going to be learning about the pivot tables and how to analyze data using the pivot tables. And for this, we're going to be making use of this data set. And this data set essentially is a sample record for human resources employee performance. So we're going to be analyzing this data set using the pivot tables. But before we go ahead with the analysis, we're going to format this data to look organized because the way it is not organized. So I'm going to start by expanding the columns to enable me see the headers. So I'm going to expand this. This one is employee ID. Then this other one is department. We'll have the job level. Then we'll have the gender. We'll have the age. We'll have the performance rating. Then this one is annual salary. Then we'll have the training hours, and finally we'll have this one, which is the promotion status. So next I'm going to do is that I want to align the text to the left. So I'm going to be selecting the data set again and then align it to the left. Then let me apply bold on the headers to differentiate it from the rest. So I'm going to be selecting the headers and then I'll click on B to make the fonts bold. Then the next thing we're going to do before we go ahead and analyzing data is to understand the data, because you cannot go ahead with analysis without understanding what you are trying to analyze. So we're going to start by looking at the headers. And for this one, this is the employee ID. So we are assuming that this is a unique code that identifies each staff. Then this one is the department, which is where the employees fall under. An employee can be in the finance department, operations department, engineering, and so on. So this is the department for the employees. Then the next one is the job level, and here we can see mid, lead, manager, senior, entry, and so on. Then for the gender, we'll have the male, and here I'm seeing non-binary, and we'll have female. So these are for the genders. Then this is the age, and then we'll have the performance rating, with 1 being the smallest and 5 being the highest. So when you have a performance rating of 1, it means you are not doing very well. But when you have 5, it means that you are doing very well. Then the next one is the annual salary, how much the staff gets annually. Then this is the training hours, the amount of hours spent on training the staff. And then this one is the promotion status. Before we go ahead and start analyzing this data, we want to check for missing values. And this is what we call data cleaning operation. Sometimes you just need to go over through the data to see if there are some missing values, and maybe if there are missing values, you can do something about it. You can remove it, or you can put something there. So we're going to look for missing values, and to do this I can simply do a search for missing values. So I'm going to be selecting the entire data set, then I'll go over to find, and I'm going to click find. Then I'll search for empty cell, so I'll go ahead and click find next. So we don't have any empty cell. Let's put an empty space inside here to see whether there is a cell containing one space or one white space. And then I'll go to find next, and there is no such thing, which means that there are no missing values in our data set. Then the next thing we're going to do now is that we need to create a pivot table. And to create a pivot table, I'm going to be selecting the data set. And for this, I'm going to be showing you a shortcut that will allow you to select the entire table at once. So I'll first select the headers, then I'll hold the Shift and the Control key, and then press the down arrow. So this is going to select the entire data. And the next thing we're going to do is to go over to the Insert ribbon and then click on Pivot Table. Here you can see select a table or range, and so far we've already selected some piece of data to analyze, and then we'll have choose where you want the pivot table to be placed. So if you want it to be in a new worksheet, you leave it at this option, and that is where we're going to leave it. Then I'll click OK. So this is going to create a new sheet and then insert that pivot table inside the sheet. So currently this is my pivot table and nothing is inside of this pivot table. And at the right side of my screen, you can see pivot table fields. And this field corresponds to the header in the table upon which we created a pivot table. So if I want to see the departments in that data set, I can simply click on departments. So this is going to give me the departments in the data set. Then another thing I can do is I may want to find out the number of staff in each department. And to do this again, I'm going to select the employee ID. And I'm using the employee ID because employee ID is unique to each staff. That way, if I count the employee IDs, it will give me the number of staff. So if you look below, you can see the filters, the column, the rows, and the values. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this employee ID to the values. So this is going to count the number of staff in each department. And for the engineering, we have 172. For the finance, we have 176. Operation is 137 and sales is 177. Okay. Then the reason why it is giving us this figure is because if you look at these values, if you click on this drop down here and click on value settings, you can see we'll have sum, count, average, max, mean, but since we are trying to count the number of staff in each department, then we'll have to leave it at this count. So count is the most appropriate way of determining the number of staffs in each department. So I'll just click OK. And then we'll still have our pivot table intact. Then the next thing we're going to do is, if you don't want any of these things to show up in your pivot table, all you need to do is simply select it, uncheck it, and then they will go away. So now we want to determine how much each department is receiving in annual salary. And for this, I'm going to select the department. And for the salary, I'm going to check this annual salary. So this is going to give me the department and the annual salaries. This time around, let's look at the values. You can see sum of annual salary. And if I click on the value field setting, you can see it's a sum. So this is going to give us the sum of the annual salaries for each department. Okay. So now we're going to also check, because we have job level here, we'll have gender, we'll have age. We may be interested in finding out the proportion of each gender in each department. And to do this, I'll simply check this gender. But if I want the gender to be in the columns, I'll simply drag this gender and place it in the columns. So this way you can see the number of females in engineering is this figure. This one is for the male and this one is for the non-binary, and then this one is for the total. So the next thing we're going to do now is that we want to give a proper title to our headings. And so far we'll have sum of annual salary here, and here we'll have column labels. This may not be the intended names you want to give for the headers. So for this, I can call this one, let's start from here, I can call this department. So I have department here, and for this one, this is female, this is okay, male is okay, non-binary is okay, total is okay. Then for this other one here, I can decide to give it a title like maybe staff annual salary. And for this other one, you can just put it as gender. So this is how you can alter the headers in your pivot table. All right. So the next we're going to do is that we want to see how much the company is spending on the job levels. And if you look at the fields, you can see we have a job level. So we want to identify the job levels and see how much the company is spending annually for salaries across the job levels. So to do this, I'm going to be copying and pasting this pivot table. So I'll simply select this pivot table, and then I'll do a Control C and then paste it where I want it to be. So I'll do Control V. So now we have two pivot tables in this worksheet. So what I want to achieve for this second worksheet is that I want to see how much the company is spending on annual salary across the job levels. So for this, I'm going to deselect this department, deselect this other one, only select the gender and annual salary. So this is what we have so far. And the good thing about pivot tables is that I can sort this pivot table. I can decide to sort in ascending or descending order. I want to see the department or the job levels that are receiving the least amount of money and the one that is receiving the highest amount of money. And to do this, all I simply need to do is to right click here, and then here I can go over to sort. And from here, I can say from largest to the smallest. I want to see from the biggest to the smallest. If I want to sort it from the smallest to the largest, I can choose the first option. So let's go with the largest to the smallest. So I'm going to click on here. And now you can see that managers receive the highest, followed by senior managers, followed by entry level. Then we'll have the mid, we'll have the lead, and then others. Then again, let's sort this one too. And if I want to sort it by grand total, then I can click here and then go to sort and then sort from largest to the smallest. Now you can see that marketing is receiving the highest chunk of the money, followed by finance, then sales, engineering, and so on. Then if I want to sort again to check which gender receive more of the money, all I simply need to do is to click anywhere in this grand total, in this row. I'll simply click on this cell and then right click again and then sort. Then I can sort from largest to the smallest or from smallest to the largest. So let's sort from the smallest to the largest. So now you can see that the female received the least, followed by non-binary and then the male. Good. So let's go over to our pivot table fields. Then the next thing we may want to do is to find out how the company is performing, maybe based on department or based on gender or based on the job level. So let me go ahead and duplicate or have a copy of this pivot table. So I'm going to select the pivot table, then copy it, and I'm going to paste it here. So now I'm going to deselect this, and I'm going to leave the annual salary, or I'll deselect this as well. Then the next thing I'm going to do is let me select department and then select the performance rating. And what I want to do is I want to determine the average of the performance rating, because I want to see on average how engineering is performing in terms of the performance rating. And the best measure to do this is average. So I'm going to go over to this place. This is some of our performance ratings, but what we want is average. So I'm going to go over to the value settings and then choose average, then click OK. So this is going to give me the average, and I can sort it from the largest to the smallest. So I'm going to simply click here and then right click, then sort it from the largest to the smallest. Here you can see that in terms of performance, sales is topping, followed by finance, engineering, and then operations. Then another thing we're going to do is we're going to learn how to format our values. It's not different from what we've been doing all this while. So if you notice, these are numbers and they are not properly formatted. It is difficult for you to even know whether it is in thousands or in millions or in billions, because it doesn't have a thousand separator, the commas that separate thousands, and perhaps it doesn't also have the currency. So we're going to be formatting these values as numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and select the values, and I'm going to go over to this place and select number, or I can choose currency. So this is going to format it for me as a currency. I can do the same thing here, and format it as a currency. And then finally, since this one is average, I can leave it at 2 decimal places. So I'm just going to format it as a number, but with 2 decimal places. So let me go ahead and select it, and then I'll go over and format it as a number, and currently is at 2 decimal places. So from here you can see that these are the performances. We have the sales, finance, but on average the performance rating on average is 2.99. So there are so many analyses you can do with a pivot table, but we're going to be stopping at this point.